Well, I want to welcome you to Funding Your Future Now podcast. And I'm Dr. Randy Dirks. So delighted to have you join us today. And this podcast is designed for nonprofit organizations. It could be for a president of a nonprofit, fundraising executives, leaders, and it really is to add value into your world. Well, today, I'm so grateful to have Brianna Pyka with us, and she is a brand and fundraising strategist from Brand Raise. And let
Mhm.
me just put out a little sort of a tickler as a question for my audience to think about. What do you do when you've exhausted your list of potential major donors? Now, that's a challenge that nonprofit leaders often face. And we're going to have that as a little bit of a dialogue in a moment with Brianna. So, welcome, Brianna. So glad you can join us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you are a brand strategist, brand and fundraising strategist, and you're with
Mhm.
Brand Raise. I believe you do that with a colleague. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do, how you got involved. So just take it away and give us some info.
Yeah. So Brand Race started really at the intersection of wanting to meet the needs of nonprofits and really be able to bridge the gap between brand and fundraising. And so my business partner, we separately had worked in previous careers and identified that really there's an opportunity to help nonprofits get really clear on their brand, understand what they do, why they do it, why it's important. And then on the flip side, we also understood that, right, fundraising can be so challenging, but if you're very clear on what you're doing and all of the basics, it can really help you be able to fundraise very effectively and sustainably. And so, really, we want organizations to be able to get off that proverbial hamster wheel and hopefully not think that fundraising is the worst thing on the planet, but that really coming from a brand led and relationship based approach can really do wonders. So, we do that by helping support organizations through major gift strategies, as well as then we also support capital campaign management. Regionally in Minnesota and Wisconsin, anywhere from 1.5 or so to 7 million is really our sweet spot. So we're so delighted to be able to partner with organizations in those ways.
Well, what a great combination of the branding side
Mm,
and the fundraising side. Obviously, they are two components that need to work together very, very
yeah,
well. So you and your colleague have developed something I think very strategic.
right.
Here's a question that I have faced as a fundraising professional. Been doing
Mm,
this now for 25 years, and it actually was a very challenging time for us in the organization. But here's the question. How do you balance those urgent
mhm,
needs? We call them sort of like the operational, keep
mhm,
the lights on, but all the other things that go on behind the scene. How do you balance that critical
mhm,
need with a major donor who says, this is what I'm interested in? And they talk about
mhm,
something that is transformational,
mhm,
very legacy defining for the
mhm,
organization, also for that major donor. They've got a lot of interest in it, but you're not able to capture really the funds that are needed to operate
mhm.
effectively. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit about how you navigate that scenario.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it can happen very commonly. And so we really find that when organizations are very clear on what they're doing, that hopefully those situations actually don't happen as often or frankly at all. But when they do come up, we like to then revert to or frankly even maybe take the donor on the journey of diving back into really what the organization is doing and how they're doing it, because that's really where maybe some of that confusion can come from, that maybe the path and the direction that the organization has is not in alignment, right, with what that maybe that transformational donor may have in their mind. And so I think it's really important to go back to the basics. It can be easy to say, but I think if you really look at it as an opportunity to take the donor along with you on that ride, it and on that experience, it can hopefully be more beneficial than you could ever anticipate. And so I think really focusing on the basics in order to then grow together, because hopefully then you'll be able to learn some things along the way together, with that potential donor. And then that perspective could really shift. And so you're able to then be really clear on the path you're able to take. The alternative option, right, is that maybe if you go back to the basics and understand really what the organization is doing and the path that the organization is interested in pursuing, that you may understand that ultimately that donor may not be a good fit. And it's really hard to be able to say
Mhm.
no, right,
Sure.
to those transformational gifts, but ultimately in the long term, it may end up being more challenging and a larger issue down the road. And so, although, right, maybe the short term gifts, that the gains, the impact could be helpful, really maybe that long term may not be as helpful. So, really hard and extremely challenging conversations to have, but so important, because we oftentimes say to the our partners that, your beneficiaries, the people that you support, are counting on you, right? And so
Mhm.
we don't want to make all that you're doing even more challenging than it already is. So trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I love that. So a couple things that you said I want to pick up. Number
Yeah.
one, it's an opportunity for clarification with that
Yeah.
donor. And,
Hmm.
there's always going to be things that people maybe aren't fully aware of. And once
Hmm.
they get that perspective, they begin
Yeah.
to say, oh, now this makes more sense to me. I know personally for where we're at, we do a lot of international funding for different initiatives. And so
Right.
that money is going outside the organization. But we've
Hmm.
had to talk to donors and say, you know what? We've got staff internally
Yeah.
that are critical to the
Mhm.
function of that international project. And
So
so
true.
once that awareness, which is what, you're alluding to, then
Mhm.
people become more, well, I'm understanding now
Mhm.
where that. And I think one other thought that came to my mind is that maybe it's a time for the president to, have a conversation with a key board member,
It's true.
board chair, and simply say, listen, I really would love this gift. You know how presidents can get sometimes.
Yeah.
But, this is, a challenge that we just can't navigate with at this particular
Yeah.
time and get that perspective. Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
Absolutely.
Alright, let's go on to the second question. So, what do you do when your board is just not receptive to opening up their networks? We know that's a major function of a board,
Yeah.
and you've exhausted as a leader your potential major donor connections. And so
Hmm.
now it's like, okay, where do we go? What do we do? And I know probably many smaller nonprofits can bump into that. So what's your counsel or your advice on that situation?
Yeah, oftentimes we find that, again, you'll hear the common thread in everything that I'm saying. It's the clarity that exists up front. So, really going back to the beginning to say, what did maybe that potential board member agree to in the first place? Maybe was the expectation, could it have been more clear? So, I think we like to also provide the option for board members to opt out. If that is really an issue to we know things change, but really we start with the clarity and understanding the role and expectations. And then from there, we identify, is this really in alignment with your vision for your participation? And if that is all clear and understood and it's still not working, then we also look to then committees. So committees are a really big part of how we support nonprofits, because we want to help build their capacity of the organization. So we know that staff is usually, a small but mighty team. And so how can we use committee members to help build that capacity? So in most cases, we do actually create a major gift prospecting committee
Okay.
that could certainly help with identifying prospects. If it's not identifying prospects, could it be identifying who may be a great fit for the committee? Could it also be a great opportunity to have a committee review communications materials? What we find is that I often encourage organizations to not struggle for too long alone.
Mhm.
Identify and create a committee if you're really working and up against a barrier, because that committee will likely give you more than you ever anticipated.
For
And
sure.
what we've seen to be true when we actually start committees as communications committees, oftentimes they will evolve into fundraising and into major gift prospecting committees.
Mhm.
Because if we start the committee as a communications committee, the people that have participated become really clear on what the organization is doing because we ask them for their feedback on the communications. We build this vision together, and then their confidence just soars. And as a result, they really naturally invite others to learn about the organization and why they're on this committee and what they're doing. And then they even raise their hand to continue on the committee and
That's
maybe in a different way. So that has been such a joy to see and to continue to evolve. In actually one capital campaign, there was a woman who started on the prospect committee. She then raised her hand to join two more committees and then eventually wanted to be a co-chair because she was so passionate and then clear about what the organization was doing. She had the time, she had the capacity, and I feel like because we were able to have really clear expectations, she was able to raise her hand for more, which is really exciting and, of course, very fulfilling for the organization.
yeah. It just seems anytime you get, well, we'll just call them volunteers. Okay.
Yeah.
I know board members are volunteers,
Yes.
but people who maybe are not on the board, like you alluded to, um, and you just say, "This is what we're thinking of. Would you like to be a part of this?" And I think
Mhm.
people, particularly if they've been regular, consistent donors, even if it's been at a smaller amount, that's not necessarily that important. But if they show that consistency of giving regularly, they really have bought into your organization and to the mission, and they
Yeah,
have a network of
I do.
amazing people. We all do. No.
Yeah, it is, and that exponential piece is really huge that I think, this organization in Colorado in particular, I mean, they started with 12 committee members, which is a pretty large
Yeah.
committee, and that exponential reach is huge, right? And knowing how many people they were able to share with as a result.
Right. Okay, the next question. This grows out of a personal situation I faced at our nonprofit many years ago. We were facing some financial challenges, and we were introduced to an individual who had significant financial resources. And he wanted to make, and we probably had revenues of $2 million annually
Mm,
at that time. So we weren't beginning, but we weren't in the big
yeah,
boy league. And he was willing to give us $1 million. So when we talk about transformational gift,
mhm,
that would make a very significant difference in our impact. And it
mm,
wasn't allocated to any specific project, it would be operational. So there's
right,
many pluses to it. However, he had attached some very strong influential
right.
criteria to us receiving that gift. And so, what advice do you give to a president of an organization who wants to maintain mission focus, wants to
Mhm,
maintain authenticity, but here's
mhm,
this bright, shiny apple out
yeah,
there, but it has some significant attachments to it?
mhm.
Just that, walk us through how you would handle that kind of a situation.
Yeah. So when we help organizations with what we call as our brand strategy process, that we get very clear on many elements of the brand strategy and positioning and messaging, core values, mission, vision, values, your purpose, to name a few. But that really helps you identify really what is our North Star. And that really
Mhm.
helps you get clear when you're facing these really challenging circumstances that, is this something that we want to adjust really the heart of our organization for? Is a really important and challenging question to ask. And so the brand strategy is supposed to be, and we create it and intend it to be used as a living breathing document. And so I think
Mhm.
it's really those litmus tests that you're able to provide for yourself, and what are the tools around you that can help you create that litmus test to say, is this something that is such a transformational gift that we want to adjust our organization for, and do we want to proceed, right? And is this a slippery slope? is this the beginning, right, for maybe other things that we may have to adjust in our organization if we say yes to this gift? And knowing that the no is as powerful as the yes, and acknowledging that that can be true for really many organizations, and being able to not be necessarily an organization that um that blows with the wind, right? And as
Yeah.
opportunities arise, right? I think that's really important that, things can change for your organization, but is it directed by you? Or is it directed by outside factors
Mhm.
primarily too? So I think extremely hard situations, but really important to really continue to test and evolve, the work of your organization.
For sure. Well, in our particular case, it was a time of a lot of serious thought. The
Yeah.
board finally came to the conclusion they were going to decline the gift.
Mm,
And had we taken that gift, the strings attached would have been incredibly challenging and could actually have undermined our whole organization. And so it was the wisest yet the hardest decision to make at that particular time.
yeah.
And obviously that donor walked away.
Mm,
That was the end of that relationship. All right. Well, here's the last question. And then after that, we've got some fast, little quick questions more on your personal life. So, you're consulting organizations all the time, and they're
mhm,
all worthy organizations, worthy of funding, worthy of gifts. And in essence, in reality, we're all competing for those dollars that are out there. So,
yeah.
how do you differentiate your impact as a nonprofit organization from what others are doing out there without, in
Mhm.
some way, creating unrealistic expectations like we're just the whiz
Yeah.
bang experts out there that have the answers to everything in the world? So,
Yeah.
ground us a little bit on how do you maintain that whole perspective, and yet you want to shout the impact that you do. So, love to hear
Yeah.
how you handle that.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and one that we help organizations answer every week. And one way that we do that is by helping organizations be really clear on their positioning. So, as humans, we like to categorize. This organization does this. And we want, as an organization and as a partner to an organization, we want that organization to be able to give their audiences the category that they want to exist in. And so we want them to not leave it up to chance of which
Mm,
category and how we
sure.
want our organization to be positioned. And so that helps for the organization itself, for all of the various stakeholders. It also helps so much when it comes to how an organization can potentially collaborate with a similar organization as well. It can also help donors see very clearly this organization does this and this organization does this piece
Right.
of the puzzle. And so it really helps many different audiences at once to be able to clearly understand where you exist in the market, not from a competitive landscape, but from a complementary landscape,
Mhm.
but
For sure.
knowing that problems and how organizations show up for their beneficiaries are incredibly complex, and that complexity usually gets lost in translation. So we want to help organizations be able to position themselves really clearly so that all of their various audiences can understand very specifically how they do things, right? What makes them different from this organization? And I think a lot of donors have communicated through the organizations that we've support that they want to make sure that there isn't duplication of services.
For
And
sure.
that's really important and a really, hard and important question to ask. So I think that positioning exercise really helps you understand the specifics, and then helps all of your stakeholders be so much more clear into how they can then recommend you, or how they
Mhm.
can help others participate and volunteer and show up for you. So that really is the best way that we guide nonprofits in dealing with that important opportunity.
For sure. Yeah. It sort of reminds me of the fact that there are many other worthy organizations out there, and I could be
Yeah.
working for others that are there
Yeah.
and enjoy it. So the whole
Yeah.
issue of seeing these other organizations, maybe let's say they're in the social services field.
Mhm.
And so we're all in that field together and to recognize, okay, there are some people here, just like you said, they
Yeah.
drill down and have a little bit more expertise in that area. And so if I want to be truly collegial in what I do, I
Mhm.
may say to somebody, you know what? We don't quite address that issue the way you, as a financial partner, are interested in. But
Mhm.
there's another partner that we collaborate with, we work with, we know of, we respect them,
Yes.
and you may want to talk to them. In fact, I would be glad to introduce you. Know that
Yeah.
that sense, give in a genuine spirit. We also do reap back again, as
Absolutely.
other organizations don't see us as grasping onto everything that is out there, but we're willing to share. And so
Yeah.
anyway, I appreciate that comment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so well said. I think it's the truest essence of community building, that you
Yes,
can really do, right? Is be really specific in how you support your community.
for
So,
sure. Well, been such an insightful conversation as you
yeah.
looked at brand and
Mhm.
fundraising and boards and all of those different dynamics at work that really have to interact very closely. And when you get this misfit happening between brand and fundraising, then that can be extremely challenging. So your comments
Yeah.
of understanding your why, understanding your vision, so it's very clear for everybody. And sometimes it's not even that clear for board members.
It's true.
And they really need to truly own that and be fully on board and committed to it. So
Yeah.
here's some quick questions at the end that just your daily life, not
Mhm.
to do with brand raise, but here's the first one. What is a great piece of professional advice you have received in your past from someone else?
Yeah, it was actually for a ed tech company when I was working there. The CEO had said, there is no such thing as balance. You bring your personal into professional and your professional and your personal, and you help them coexist together. And that was a really big eye opening moment for me as a new mom at that time. And it was really, really insightful that I didn't need to have this balance, but that sometimes they can be imbalanced because you
Mhm.
need to maybe bring one into the other. And that was a really important shift for my brain to be able to make versus having this, separation.
Yeah, just the flexibility that
Mhm.
that person gave to
True.
you
Yeah.
was great.
Huge.
Well, here's the second question. What's a daily habit you just cannot live without?
Yes, it is prepping for the next day. So I feel like I need to, download the current day, make
Mm.
sure I've created my list for the next day if I wasn't able to finish a specific task. So that really gives me kind of peace at the end of the day and good preparation then for what I need to conquer the next day.
I love it because when you do that well, you don't wake up in the middle of the night,
It's true.
this angst in your head, but you've sort of put it to bed, you've addressed it, you've come to some
Mhm.
conclusions. So that's great. Okay, next question. If you could go back to your 20-year-old self and tell yourself something, what would that
Mhm.
piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think it would be around being bold and asking for what you need. That I was a little bit more shy and soft spoken in my 20s. And so I think really being direct and specific about what I need and and then even how I can support others and what they need. That for me was be my biggest advice.
Yeah, I love it. Be bold and take some risks.
Yeah.
All right. So, next question is if you could identify what we'll call, and we don't want to do it in a negative way, sort of a failure. It didn't
Yeah.
work out quite the way you hoped in your life. But,
Mhm.
however, because of that experience, you are now the richer for it. That actually led to some success in your life. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I think it certainly could be a seemingly small activity that this could be seen as, but I was working on a PowerPoint and for a more high profile audience. And the person in leadership role at the time had said, no more mistakes. And that was really seemed very extreme, right? Because I very much was, fail fast, be able to make a mistake, but adjust quickly. But that really attuned my senses in generally to how I can be more detail oriented, right? And more specific in my outputs. and be hyper focused on being a good copy editor, for example, in everything that I'm creating as well. So
Yeah.
although it was very jarring and in a very hard experience as a failure
Mm,
in putting something out with an error, that has really clearly right stuck with me. That
mm.
really the importance and the focus on your work and your output.
For sure. Well, that's great. There's a saying talks about iron sharpening iron,
Yeah,
and you got sharpened, but by being
I
sharp, it actually produced something really more valuable for you in your
did.
career. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Okay, Brianna, the last question: when you need to just sort of relax, disconnect, whether it's
Mhm.
weekly or once a quarter or annually, where's a favorite place you like to go?
Yeah, more around my home. It's really just for a walk and for a quiet walk and, taking in all of my senses and doing that as much as I possibly can, even in the winter. I think it's even
Okay.
more interesting in the winter because
Yes.
you're really committed, that means, right? Especially if
Cool.
it's below zero or not too high above zero. But then more kind of travel wise, I love going to Cliff Island, Maine,
Oh,
and really just being able to, it's such a peaceful and calm and very low key environment. So it's an island. And so everyone's on island time. And so there's really no hurry. And
yes.
the most challenging, decision you need to make is when are we going to eat and when are we going to the beach, right? And that's perfect for me.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah, walking earlier in the morning, if you can get
Mhm.
out, less distractions, it can be a very enriching time processing, thinking obviously about the day. Well, Brianna, what a delight to just have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
See your effervescent spirit and your can-do kind of an attitude. Grateful for all of that. Love for you
Thank
to
you.
share a little bit with our audience, more about what you do and how people can connect with you. So, why don't you
Yeah.
just take it away?
Yeah, I'd love always invite connections on LinkedIn, and I love to be active on LinkedIn as well. And of course, at any time, you can reach out to Brianna, Brianna at brandraise.co. Anytime, I love helping. Any questions that come up, and happy to participate in any way that I can support you.
Excellent. Well, that's where I found you on LinkedIn. So
Yes,
that worked out.
love those connections and all that they bring.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, I want to just thank my audience for taking this podcast in today. And again, my name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and this is Funding Your Future Now podcast. And I'm certainly available to connect with you in any way. And so feel free to do that. And so we'll see you on the next podcast. So bye for now.